نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we will cover session number 3 of the fast of Ramadan, specifically those who are excused from fasting. Responsibility follows that the individual tasked with a responsibility also has the capability to physically, spiritually, intellectually carry out a task. As for the responsibility of fasting in Ramadan, the physical demands are not easy, especially when one is fasting in the month during the summer months. Such a person needs to endure hunger, cravings, thirst, physical exhaustion, all of which can affect the individual emotionally and possibly spiritually as well if they are not responsible or capable of doing so, yet they are expected to do so. Thus, for those who are not responsible, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills for you ease and He does not will for you hardship. And this is an indication for those who have an excuse from fasting in the month of Ramadan. Previously, we talked about those who are required to fast. And this had to be a person who is a Muslim, has sanity and is an adult. And all those who are not exempt due to a valid excuse. Today we will talk about what those valid excuses are and who are those who are exempt or excused from that particular fast. So these are the insane, the children, the sick, the traveler, the elderly, the pregnant and nursing woman, and the woman in her menstruation and postnatal bleeding. We'll talk about each of these sections in detail. Note that these are on the screen. Please do not leave this video until you complete the video or come back to complete it later on, because each one of these cases are special and need to be discussed in detail. So kindly do not go with what's on the screen and forward it or something like that. Okay. So the first case, let's look at the insane. As I've mentioned before, insanity lifts the responsibility of actions taken by that individual because of their intellectual incapacity. The insane are not responsible for fasting as long as they remain insane. If they were to return back to the insanity during the month of Ramadan, then they need to make up the fasts that they had missed in that particular Ramadan and complete all of the remaining fasts that remain in that particular month. Now we will talk about something called qada, which means make up fasts or making up of fasts, and we will also talk about kafara, which is atonement of broken fasts, and that will happen in a different session. But I just wanted to give you some context of what is make up fasts, and they are called qada. As for children, not required to fast until they reach the age of puberty, parents typically encourage their children to build in them an endurance, and also for the children who are willing to be part of the rest of the family, to allow them to fast a portion of the day so that they are not burdened by the intensity and the difficulty of the fast, yet they are participating in some way or another. Now, this builds within children the spirit of feeling empathy for others, those who are less fortunate. It also keeps greed and selfishness in check. So parents will often encourage their children to fast a portion of the day, typically half a day in the month of Ramadan. As for the sick, there are specific cases, and we need to talk about this in a little more detail than the others. Now, here's the basic rule. Any person who fears that his or her illness will intensify if they were to fast, they should not fast in the month on that particular day or the month of Ramadan, depending on what their condition is. Now, this applies to both acute illnesses, which is a temporary, more severe illness, and chronic illnesses, which is a more milder form of the illness, but it is a permanent one that occurs over the rest of their lives. Now, before I get into these cases, I want to also mention what is whether they give out in ransom, which is fidya. Fidya means to feed 2 full meals per day for every day of the fast that was missed in Ramadan. So if somebody missed 10 days in Ramadan, then they would give out in fidya for 20 meals. Typically, one would miss the entire month because of a condition, and in that case they would feed 60 full meals to cover as a ransom. And then whether they give out in fidya or they make up the fast, that determination will depend on their chance of recovering from the condition at a later time. If they can recover at a later time, in other words, there's a possibility of recovering from that condition of the illness that they have at a later time. For example, they may have a flu. In that case, of course, there's a chance, there is a possibility of recovery from that. One would not pay in ransom, but rather fast another day after Ramadan. If they have no hope of recovering from the condition, for example, this person may have diabetes type 1. If that person, diabetes type 1 is, or any diabetes is a permanent condition, but it depends on whether they can fast or not. Diabetes type 1 is an example where one cannot fast if they were, because they need to have insulin. If they did not get insulin, they could go into a state of shock, or they could even die from that condition, right? So in that case, they would give out in fidya before the month even starts. So knowing that they will miss 30 days of fasting or 29 days, they will give that amount out in ransom before the month of Ramadan. And if they are unable to do that, they can do it at a later time, but the best is to give it before. So what if consumed breaks the fast, and how is it consumed? This is important because the question often arises about medication. What can we do in terms of medication? Can we take medication in the month of Ramadan? For example, can you take insulin, for instance, through IV, or can you take an injection for whatever particular reason you need to take in your muscle? All right, so that the Hanafi scholars do not consider injections or IV for the purpose of dispensing needed medicine, including insulin, to break the fast, provided it does not enter the body cavity. In other words, somebody is injected directly into the stomach, where that liquid is actually entering the cavity of the stomach. Okay, that would be an exception. But typically the fast is broken when somebody eats or drinks something, whether that's medicine or food, when it enters the body through certain passages. One is the mouth, then the nose, then the eyes. For example, somebody takes eye drops because that is connected to the nasal passages and is connected to the throat, all right, which reaches the stomach. So the mouth, the nose, the eyes, and the point of defecation. Okay, now this applies to any medicine that is needed by an ill person. Nutrition, on the other hand, some people may take nutrition through IV, or they may take vitamins that is not necessarily needed. In that case, that's not going to be the same as medicine, and that determination would be made by a physician on whether that is absolutely needed or not. Such a person would typically not be fasting anyhow. Now, you cannot break your fast if you just fear that your condition is if you don't have a fear that your condition is going to worsen. So for example, somebody has a common cold or slight fever. That kind of situation, you can probably rest it out and it can probably get better. One should not break their fast for that unless there is the fear that one's condition is going to get worse. Now, who makes the determination of who is capable of recovering, who is not, who is harmed by the fast, and who is not? It is made by a Muslim physician. Now, there is a situation where one may need to make a determination on themselves on whether they can fast or not. This is an extreme case where somebody is extremely thirsty, extremely hungry, so much so that it causes extreme anxiety and pain in them. That person can break their fast and make it over after Ramadan. The next case is the case of the traveler. The traveler, anyone who has to travel 48 miles. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, travel was much more difficult than today. Today we can sit in a car, it's comfortable. With 48 miles hardly takes not even an hour to reach, and if you're traveling by plane, it's an insignificant amount of time. The time of the Prophet ﷺ, people used to travel on foot, horseback, camelback. They would come across wild beasts, scorpions, snakes. The terrain would be difficult. There's a chance of highway robbery. All of these were difficult situations. So there is a dispensation or a rukhsa for the one who's traveling to fast another day. However, we need to make a determination on whether that travel is in fact very difficult or not. The dispensation is there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, in another location, mentions this particular situation of the one who can fast when they have the opportunity and the choice not to. وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. And if they fasted, it would be better for them if only they understood, if only they knew. Okay? So this is an indication of the one who should fast when they can fast, and this is applies typically to the traveler. That person has a dispensation, but if traveling is not that difficult, they should really try to fast. Okay. So the next case is the elderly. The elderly, if they are too old and too weak to fast, they must give in ransom, which is the fidya, and it's the same, two per day, 2 meals per day. And if they are unable to fast any other time, so if they are too weak to fast and there is the possibility of them not recovering from that state, then they should give in fidya. If they have the prospect to regain their strength at a later time, then they should fast later when they have their strength back. Otherwise, they should pay in fidya or ransom. And if they cannot pay the ransom, then they should seek the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As for pregnant women, a woman who is pregnant or nursing a child should fast at a later time if she is fearful that the fasting would harm her or the child. And she can make that determination by consulting a gynecologist, from a Muslim gynecologist, or if not available, just a regular gynecologist who can help her make that determination if she is going to be affected or if the child is going to be affected by fasting. And the last but not least situation is for the menstruating woman and the one who is in postnatal bleeding, which happens after childbirth. For the menstruating woman, she does not fast during the days she is affected by it in Ramadan. She makes up for that for the days that she missed, up to 10 days um, after Ramadan. And for the woman who is in postnatal bleeding, she can make up to the entire month for the days that she missed during Ramadan for that. Of course, it could be fewer days, and then she just makes up those days after Ramadan. Okay? Both menstruating women as well as those who had postnatal bleeding do not make up their prayers. They only make up their fasts. Okay, so that covers all of the different groups that I have mentioned: the insane, the children, the sick, the traveler, the elderly, the pregnant and nursing woman, and those who are in the monthly and postnatal bleeding. Next, we will cover what are those things that nullify the fast. We'll cover some points. We probably will not go into too much detail, but we will provide a PDF document that will have the full list that one can consult at a later time. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with the resolve to learn about when we should fast and when we are exempt from fasting. And when we are incapable of doing that, to consult those who are the experts, which are Islamic scholars as well as doctors when it pertains to advice about medicine. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to see this month of Ramadan to its end and to see the next Ramadan. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وسلم عليه. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.